Hello? Can you guys hear me? In the back, can you guys hear me? Nice, thumbs up. Cool. Welcome to Diesel Bookstore. Welcome to the Brentwood Country Mart. I'm very excited to introduce this event. This is Dan O'Brien, as you guys know, and his wife, Jessica. So Dan's going to be talking about 3 of his books that are going to be released this month. Actually are currently released, and you can come get them at Diesel Bookstore. That is Survivor's Notebook from Scarsdale and True Story, a trilogy. And as you guys know, also that they will be discussing this book, and then 12 different people are going to come up and read passages from it, which is only fitting. It's a book with universal themes, and so it stands to reason that a multiplicity of voices are going to speak out on and share the topic. So with no further words from myself, Dan O'Brien. Oh, actually, can I actually say a few more words? Right. So Dan and the event will transpire, and then he will be walking into Diesel, where you can purchase the book. And as soon as you purchase the book, you can have it personalized by him. 2 out of the 3 books came. One of the books is having some production issues, but which will only, as I leave you in further suspense, you will be left in further suspense yourself. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that introduction. I'm Dan O'Brien. Again, this is my co-producer, my wife, Jessica Clair. Jessica's known for a long time that my dream as a poet and a playwright and a literary writer was to get beautiful and talented actors to read instead of me. So that's what's mostly going to happen in the next 45 minutes or so. Yeah, there are 3 books coming out. The play collection is having issues. So there are 2 books today. The book we're going to read mostly from tonight is Survivor's Notebook. And this book is important to me for lots of reasons. They're prose poems, but they have to do with the experience that Jessica and I had about 7 years ago, where Jessica was treated for breast cancer, and 6 months later, I was treated for colon cancer. And that's why we're excited to have the support of Stand Up to Cancer tonight. And we're hoping, of course, you'll buy books, but I hope even more that you'll consider donating to Stand Up to Cancer. I hope you get yourself checked out if you have any symptoms or any family history of these diseases. I'd just like to remind people of that. Would you like to say anything before I?
Yes, I just want to thank you all for being here. This is a really exciting day for us to share Dan's work, and I want to thank my friends for being here and reading. Now, we have been on strike, so a lot of us have forgotten how to read or speak in front of people, so please be kind. And yes, thank you so much. This group of people and so many of you in the audience helped us get through our what do you say, annus horribilis? What is it? Yeah, that terrible year. Yes, that we were both sick, and we are forever in your debt. And thank you for lifting us up and supporting us. Okay, and without further ado, Dan is going to read the first poem.
Sure, okay, great. Am I close enough? Okay. So this is a poem. You know, this book is very much about coming back to life after a life-threatening illness. And there's some heavy poems in here for sure, but a lot of these poems are full of hope and bewilderment and astonishment and love. And I hope this is one of them. It's called Sunday. Oh, may it be Sunday always and everywhere in California. Blemishless women with breathless cheekbones wavering in line for coffee. My girl in the back seat, her mother beside me, unseen whistling for the tabby as coyotes lope through alleys. We parked down slope, bowers garlanded in blush. I press my daughter's body to my body and carry her through the chlorine cavity beneath polluted arteries, the enlarging bright aperture of sand, then waves that pain my feet, my senseless skin revivifying in the effluvial flop and stream. I am becoming less and more myself, renescent, The mountain snows dribble from a drainage pipe like the Seminole Jordan. Seagulls alight as if to say, look where you are standing. For this you have survived. Our daughter laughs as she pummels us both. Oh, may it be always and everywhere now.
Our next two poems are going to be read by my best friend, Lennon Parham, who was the third member of our family. And in fact, some doctors' offices thought that we were in a throuple because Lennon was always there. And I'd like to say to Lennon that that invitation is always open. Lennon?
Husband said thumbs up. Oh, God. Okay. Thank you, Dan. Okay, I'm reading two. Flying on Easter. There are similarities. You anticipate with dread, but also the promise of release. Waking early, morning birds warble in the nightshade tree, multitudes of nobodies. Where are we going? Where have we been? Many souls try your patience. An old woman accuses you of selfishness. You reflect, is she wrong? You would like to describe how you're lost, but surely she is too. You admire most now those who speak softly, say thank you. Okay. Hey, Paul. A vision. A man is praying. Is the man a gardener on his knees? His hands are his hands planting seeds, weeding, wind. What is this man unlocking? Is it spring?
Our next poem will be read by Danielle Schneider. Danielle was famous for coming to appointments with me and recording them because I would get out of there and go, well, I guess it's Deadsville for me. And she would say, no, let's listen to the recording. So she is the court stenographer of our family.
Sometimes I would just listen to them like a podcast. Okay. They look at you. They look at you as if to see. How have you changed? Has it aged you prematurely, they mean? Your skin, hair, weight, glare of your eyes. Is it hiding there somewhere inside you? Did I see you this morning jogging? Can I ask you, they ask you, what kind you had? They whisper, I was given a year and that was 5 years ago. 5 years ago, they say, you'd be dead. They divulge, I had it, have it. Things are changing, but we're vertical at least. My treatment makes me sleepy. My treatment makes me eat. My treatment leaves me incapable of honking my own horn. Some say nothing at first. Cornered in disguise, I have become a homebody. They smile. It has been too long. Let's not let that go again. Go, chase after your girl.
Now, it's only fitting that at the launch of my real husband's book, that my fake TV husband would be here reading some selections. Hale Bornheimer, please come to the stage.
Thank you. And sorry, Dan, I have failed to order my multi-focus contact lenses, so I'll need to read this 25-point font. These are beautiful poems. Genetics. The hidden staircase outdoors and so steep it's almost a ladder shortcutting between intestinal hillside lanes is deceptively treacherous where the cement's unstable here and there. Chips and shards, hollow divots, scabs and scars, worn by footsteps and wind and rain that scours the canyons in our flashing winters. Why the crack in this step and not in that? Why the foothold lost here and not there? Surely the designer is to blame, or the maker, or our place in time, or the fault unknown, unsettling. There's no rail. We descend with our hands open. And this one, right? Tight. Sirens for somebody, a monarch on a string. Our daughter is racing beneath its rippling tendrils. This is the only day, she reminds us.
And next we have Paul Scheer. We have a joke where we say Paul takes care of me. Paul is taking care of all of us by doing all of this technology, and he may never speak to me again. So this is it for us. Paul?
It was lovely knowing you. Funny. I used to be. When I was a kid, I might find myself on a roll in company, and it would almost frighten me how I was making everybody crack up as if playing an instrument virtuosically, their avid faces glued to me with awe and adulation, but also distrust and jealousy, if not unmasked villainy. When did it start? A friend's mother at a Christmas party, appreciating my routine, remarked to another mother, "Isn't he entertaining?" Then my mother's stepmother, appraising my prospects in a steakhouse in Vermont, "Well, he does have a Jewish nose." Then the premiere at the Majestic, when the corpulent impresario announced with a tinge of malice, "Look at this young man, he'll go far." I took off into the moonlight after in Providence and passed right by Elliott Smith with his tattoos and the hoops in his earlobes, only a few years before he'd stab himself to death in the chest. Your false self, a psychologist might say. So when did I lose it? Did I? When I moved to the city and holed myself up to write, I believed I was being honest, being true to myself. But now, after cancer, I sometimes miss it. I catch myself wondering who I was and could be now.
This will be a joint intro. So our next reader is Jason Mantzoukas. Am I right? There he is.
There he is.
Jason, we've known Jason since college. This is when I was funny. I was in an improv group with these two. And actually, I believe my first improv scene with Jessica, I proposed.
That's true.
How pathetic is that?
There weren't many women in the group, to be fair. I didn't have a lot to choose from.
Anyway, Jason, we've known forever and we love him. And he's I hope this poem suits his many talents. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Secondhand. Toiling for atonement, in those early days, I worked through the night at an investment bank. My comrades were actors and playwrights, poets and singers, and our harried boss, we'd soon learn, had a blood cancer and wouldn't survive the winter. Rising muddled at noon, I would retire to the second room in my sublet with the bricks and the crumbling mortar, boxes of photos of the leaseholder and her faded friends with feathered hair, skinny dipping upstate before AIDS. And I would write, or gaze instead through my window on a courtyard where the snow accumulated on trash cans. Audience to an old woman across the way, ironing her underwear. Bohemia at last. My walls were decorated with Javanese shadow puppets, marionettes, gargoyles. The furniture was at least secondhand. So-called water bugs would beach themselves on the threadbare rug during downpours. The toilet was off the kitchen, no shower, but a clawfoot tub with a hose and a wide-mouthed pitcher for rinsing. I didn't cook. Voices passing my door were customers tramping up and downstairs from the gnomish, long-bearded dealer above me. The super was long-bearded too. He lived in the basement with a woman and several, it was unclear how many, long-bearded men with fanatical eyes. Every one of them allegedly members of a sex cult with a queen bee structure. whatever that meant exactly. The super commandeered my new down coat when it was delivered and left beside the mailboxes. He'd smile at me teasingly, but I was too scared to ask. Often I'd see him cozy in my coat as he hauled the trash from the courtyard to the sidewalk, as I tiptoed from my apartment to run the gauntlet of shoppers to the charity dive and its hoard of used books, underlined, annotated, dedicated in the hands of the dead. The prices were penciled faintly inside. I read more books there than I could ever hope to buy.
So the next reader is very important to me. His name is Dan O'Brien. Just a quick anecdote about Dan. I think we met because we were at the same agency for playwriting and for acting, and he would occasionally get my very meager royalty checks. And he would always let me know. He would give me the checks. I mean, this is what a great guy this is. Maybe once I would, well, and then for many years, the other thing I'll point out is for many years, IMDb swore that you were married to my wife. So if you clicked on Jessica St. Clair's husband, Dan O'Brien, it went right to this guy. But he's since acted in plays of mine, and I love him, and I hope you like him.
I apologize for any confusion that my name might have caused this evening to anyone here. And this is a poem about a writer's conference where my wife, Julie Shavers, is a playwright and has collaborated with Dan several summers as a fellow there. Why write? Returning to the conference after chaos. The last time I was here was maybe a month before my wife found her lump. 6 months more and they'd cut me open too. I am transported to another summer when, on the convocational evening, like the first morning of school, shy greetings in the heat beside the bus from the airport in line for dinner, who will sit with me? Who will read my words? Who will help mollify the tyranny of my self-scrutiny? I saw a woman crying. Like a child, dazed, glancing helplessly, escorted by the elbow from the boisterous dining hall by the conference director, whose face remained firmly placid like a kindly pediatrician. I asked what was wrong, and somebody said her husband had dropped her off in the afternoon and arriving home, dropped dead of an embolism. She was in shock, understandably uncomprehending. I can't go now. Desperate to convince anybody who'd listen, I have to stay. I have to find a way to put all this down on paper.
Our next reader is my good friend, Melissa Rauch. And Melissa taught us what a Jewish woman does when someone she loves gets sick, which is drop off 1,000 pounds of food every day. And Melissa is also famous for doing something that I highly recommend if a loved one that you have is sick. Instead of asking me if she could come over, she would pretend to be in the neighborhood, even though she lives an hour from me, and would say, "Hey, I'm just around the corner. Can I pop by?" And so she would come by and give me more food. Here you go.
Oh, thank you. An apple box, a child-sized mic, perhaps. Thank you, Paul. Oh, thank you. Hi, everybody. All right. Her first day. After her first day at the new school, after an interview on the phone concerning 20 years of writing, I can't complain. After learning an old friend's husband is dying with brain tumors, watching your feed has meant the world to us, she posts. I received the call. No evidence of disease. I prefer NED because remission reminds me of sin and the Inquisition. Some say clear, like cancer's a video game or Scientology. Others say clean, though I won't. I don't know why. I don't know why not. Except to say the sick aren't soiled. Not morally, anyhow. I relay to my wife the news as she pushes our daughter in the swing. Our daughter is turning 4 next month. She swings high and leaps off and flicks me on the chin, teasing, "One day you'll be shorter than me." Then lifting my shirt, "Why do you have this scar?" I stall. "This one?" Looking to her mother for rescue. The squealing swing. I pull my shirt down. "From a surgery," her mother steps in. "Doctors fixed him. Doctors went into his body and took something bad out. But he's good now. He's all good." Now my daughter has a follow-up question. "Where's your family?" "Not us. Your mother and father and sisters and brothers." And for the first time with her, I have to justify. "I had to leave them behind." She asks, "Why? Because they were hurting you?" I am reluctant to reveal my failure twice, my weakness at least. "Because they never learned how to love," I explain. But please, rushing to reassure her, "You mustn't worry, my dear. I will always be with you. I promise."
Thank you. So I thought that would be a fitting, that poem would be a fitting transition to reading a little bit from this memoir. It's a memoir of childhood. That's me on the cover. Hard to believe. But the ears, I've been told, are recognizable still. It was a difficult childhood, and that poem alludes to the fact that I'm estranged from my family. So I'm going to read some, and it'll probably explain why that is, or some of why that is. He was stumbling around the side of the house, no jacket, no shoes. Was he barefoot? The seat of his jeans, the shoulders and back of his blue wool sweater, his mussed blonde hair all matted with snow, melting against the glass of the storm door as he struggled to open the front door. The pineapple-shaped brass knocker glinted with each jerk. As we pulled into the driveway, I pointed him out to our mother. She followed him inside. Slumped at the breakfast table in slanted winter sunlight, he was crying, no, sobbing, convulsively. I'd never heard such sounds before. She knelt with her hand on his knee. "What did you do?" she asked him, over and over. Then to me, without looking, "Take your sister upstairs." Joyce was away at college. This was her vacated attic bedroom, where I sat on the floor beside my younger sister, Sally, as she played with her dolls. How much time had passed? Stephen appeared out of nowhere, holding baby Tommy in his arms. "Paul jumped off the roof," he said, as if sharing some delicious gossip, and our mother was driving him to Dr. Linden. But the roof? How could he have climbed up there? He must have been sick. I'd seen him coughing through his tears, his chest and neck straining for breath. Suddenly, I was certain I would get sick too, would catch his disease, whatever it was. On the way up the stairs, I had noticed that the window in our father's attic office was gone, removed from its quarter-moon frame and laid on the floor against the wall. A screwdriver and some screws were scattered across the desk, beside a note scribbled on loose leaf. "Dear Mom, looks like you'll finally get that playroom you've always wanted." She'd been pressuring him for months to move up to the attic. Her second-born, her eldest son, had grown into a disappointment that she seemed to want only to forget, to exile him to the room where I was now, unaware that I might never truly leave this room again, might never stop trying to understand what was happening to my brother and to us all. That night, when my mother came home, I led her up to the attic. Our father was at the hospital still, the hospital where we'd been born. Paul had been shaking like a leaf when she left his bedside, Mother said. I handed her the note and watched her read, and she collapsed crying in my arms. "This is a secret," she whispered, her breath in my ear. "We must take to our graves." When I was 42 years old, a softball-sized tumor was cut out of my colon. This has been a long time coming, I thought, as I lay in the hospital bed. Perhaps the cancer had been growing in me since that Tuesday afternoon in February in 1986, when my brother tried to kill himself. He was 17 and I was 12, and from that day I had had symptoms brought on by stress. My mother's reassuringly dismissive diagnosis, spastic colon, the curse of the O'Briens, kept me from the doctor sooner, though the blame, if there must be blame, is mine. Had the tumor been growing for 30 years, fed by my ambition, my masochism, my writing, had it metastasized like a singularly scarring memory I could not or would not forget? 6 months earlier, my wife had been diagnosed with a mid-stage breast cancer. Our daughter was not yet 2. I knew that now was the right time, the only time, to begin to tell the truth of my childhood, to understand why ours was a tragic family, to try to cure myself for my family now, my wife and daughter, by writing the story of who I am and where I'm from with honesty, insight, and something like forgiveness, to try to leave the old place behind. Okay, thanks. Thank you. You want to introduce June?
I'll introduce
Okay.
Our next reader is June Diane Raphael. June was the person who summoned me to her Starbucks, which happened to be the Four Seasons lobby, where she would order sparkling water and stay for 12 hours. And I remember coming to her and asking her, and I don't know why, this is June's role in our group. She tells us what to do. She tells us what to wear, when we should cut our hair. And I said, June, do you think we're going to die? Like, what's going to happen? She said, I'm not worried about that, but I am going to send several healers to you. So we had a revolving door of healers come to us, and in the darkest moments, I would say, June, how is this going to turn out? And she would say, well, somebody's going to survive. Why not Dan? And that became our rallying cry. Why not Dan? So we're so lucky to have June in our lives.
Dedication. What do you do when an old friend has dedicated his poem to you because he thought you were dying? As you are, we all are. Who knows the day or hour? A particle of clot, a red light sailed through, and lights out. Show's over. Nobody had warned me. I bought his new collection because I like him. And turning the page, I am shocked. Then touched, then unnerved. The sense of a sentencing, my name in stone. He's my age, give or take, with a wife and a daughter and a grizzling beard like mine. I think the poem is strong, ekphrastic. That is a poem about a painting I'm unfamiliar with. Maybe my name was appended as an afterthought? A why not? A coup de grace unintentionally? But its closing lines evoke the doom-dim afternoons of the languishing months in the bardo of chemotherapy. The static nebulas vibrating in the cobwebbed corner above my sickbed. He has conjured that perfectly. So I must remember to write and thank him.
Thank you, June. Our next reader, Casey Rose Wilson, is famous for delivering a 20-pound sack of chocolate to our doorstep in the middle of my last treatment. And now I have a sugar addiction, and it's her fault. Casey?
Wildfires. Ash drifts like pollen. A pall sieves the sun. The campfire conundrum of sage and plastic, like the fallout from the towers that may have sown the seeds of our tumors. There's talk of containment on screen, maps resembling CT, PET, MRI. The waiting room's empty, so the verdict is swift. NED. No evidence of disease. The yet is implied, but not until some other outcome takes me. Hopefully, while I am submerged in sleep and my daughter is old enough to write poetry for me. But for tonight, we pack our bags and flee. In the desert morning, abstractly she paints while I sketch these words for her. I drink only water. I used to sleep, but now I wake at dawn without remorse. The bronze statue absorbs radiation. The rake is in the sand. The plunk and crinkle of phantasmal patak in the shade of the lemon trees, while my girl slips lemonade, and we debate the pros and cons of presidents and queens versus giving each other what is needed. At home, the hills are rolling molten, while fountains babble here. I follow my darling's darting footfalls through the flowering branches of a maze. I used to worry, but now I laugh until it's gone.
Our next reader is Tony Hale. Tony has been witness to not one, but two of us being secretly pregnant and almost throwing up on him. One passed out, Lennon passed out on him. I almost threw up on him. But Tony has been such a comfort to us, and we're just so happy to have him in our lives.
Napping after cancer. It feels dangerous, and almost nothing like traveling to Saint Remy when my wife was expecting and beginning to show. Her morning sickness lifting, to pass through Roman arches and chrome yellow wheat fields beneath desiccated cypresses, lining trails pocked with irises and blue mulberries, where Van Gogh painted through barred windows, omitting said bars. And eschewing the guided tour, we indulged ourselves instead in the market square, gorging on cheeses, so slender the two of us, even her despite her bulge. Then zigzagging downhill into the grand alleys, between colonnades of sighing plane trees, stretching to the straightaway across from the intimation murmuring from her body to mine, our child tumble turning inside. How could we know what was waiting for us just around the bend? In the afternoon, we pulled over to rest our eyes, drowsy from the drive in a gravelly rest stop, shoulder to shoulder like effigies, with our seats reclined and the windows wide, dandelions unfurling in a breeze.
So our next reader is maybe the first actor. I've written many plays where there's a character named me, so named Dan O'Brien. So I must be a narcissist if this event hasn't proved that. This actor is the first actor to play me, and he was younger and more attractive, and I've always tried to keep him in my life for that reason. So here he is, Noah Bean.
I could never grow the O'Brien beard, though. It was always a little too splotchy here. Your message. Fog. The winter weather on the mountain. Until out of the fog, snow materializing. Then evanescing into fog again. It was also drearily mystical and thrilling. I couldn't afford a car. I feared an SUV driven by an undergrad would come barreling around a bend in the clouds and pulverize me. So, precautions were taken. Hugging loose shoulders, ditch diving. This was when I began to accept the beginning of the end of youth. Events barrel past, some collide. Sickness mystifies. Sickness may clarify us yet. Every night when I made it home, unlocking the door to my borrowed fable in the woods, I rejoiced to see the blinking beacon of your message. Let me listen now.
So now I have the honor of introducing my wife, Jessica St. Clair. And I don't want to embarrass her too much, but I said on her podcast the other day what I am going to say now. She had the much harder job to have finished treatment, be recovering from cancer, and suddenly have a husband diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And she, people that know Jessica, if she experiences fight or flight, she fights. Like it's fight or fight. It's a question of how much she's going to fight. And she fought like hell for me. And I was beyond lucky to have her as a guide, really, for my for the 9 months of my treatment. Somebody who'd been down that road very recently, who could say, "Look, I'm still here. I'm still standing. I've felt like you're feeling now, and we're going to make this." So anyway, she's going to read a few poems, and I love her. Thank you.
Marriage. I fed you. You wore your helmets of ice and mask of ice, only a mouth opening, mittens and slippers of ice, an electric blanket to maintain homeostasis, tubes seeding your blood with the molecules that scour piece by piece. And I read to you, afraid of my voice, while around us the randomized populations were moaning, weeping, begging behind the curtains. I did not want to return. I had no choice. And this time, you fed me. Our wedding. Still, I feel the cream of your dress over the bone in the flesh of your hips at the party, posing in the shin-high brush with the flies scribbling around our heads like halos, disintegrating as we kissed. Thank you. Our next reader is somebody very special to me, Julia Louis-Dreyfus. She got me pregnant when within 30 seconds of meeting her, she told me to get off the pill. And I did without talking to my husband about it. And then when I got sick, she was there. Even though we didn't know each other very well, she was always there for me. And then she got sick and I got to be there for her. And so we obviously have a soul pact. And I am so grateful to have her in my life, because when someone as beautiful and talented and lovely as Julia goes through something like this, where you're like, well, shit, I guess that's a club I want to be into. So thank you, Julia. I love you.
Uh-oh. Thank you, Paul. Thank you. See you next year. I sit listening through the curtain to the chemotherapy nurses debating the meaning of the term Irish twins, while the phlebotomists jabbing the usual veins, then the side of my wrist, the back of my hand, before she sighs, I give up, stopping up blood. You won't be a hand model today, but the swelling's saline, not air. You won't die. Let me fetch the vampire, who has to be, of course, muscular, jocular, slapping my arm, like your wife, shouts the vampire. Doesn't your wife do this? Slap, slap, slap. Then you have a port? I had a port. What kind of medicine they give you? And I have to force myself to remember. Full foxery. She squints at me hard as if thinking maybe the treatment has worked. She doesn't say so, as she preps the other arm to plunder a virgin vein. And the initial needler endeavors to distract. You like dogs? You have dogs? What kind? What's her name? After the CT scan, the vampire's taping me up. This young man is strong like a wolf. As I gather myself to go, I find the door blocked
by a lamb of an old woman who's just had a scan too. She's smiling at the room full of patients in the giddiness of diagnosis, the boredom of purgation, the possibility of grace. I am inspired by the gaiety in her gaze as she says to us all, "See you next year."
Thank you. Well, we've reached the end of our program. Thank you